As you look at your environment with changes in the allocation of resources coming downstream, how do you lobby for the projects that you think most important, and do you do it in one-on-one or in a committee format? How is it that you identify what's important to you and make sure that it stays in the budget?
Well, I think there's two questions there. One is the question around resourcing, and the second question is around kind of the governance and how you get decisions made. I think on the resourcing side, there was a question in that you all sent us that said, the average CIO lasts 3 or 4 years, and the joke is that a bad one lasts 3 and a good one lasts 4. I'm in my 3rd, going into my 4th year, so I'll let you guys know.
Your average right now.
I'm right in the middle right now. It's still out for debate. I think the thing around resourcing is the death of a CIO is saying, if I only had 4 more FTEs, if I only had. You have to take your problems out of their office. Don't try to put your monkey on your back on their back. They've got a bigger one than you. And so resourcing is never the supply and demand and all of these things around, the clarity and productivity and realization and all those things are all great things that I look at. But the net of it is, when the CEO or someone shows up and says, we think there's a return here and we need this done, we generally don't say, I need to hire 3 people. We generally say, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, and we move on. So, and we deal with it. And we try desperately not to build these overburdensome staff counts that are on our payroll, and no offense to that. But when a company has the variety of things going on, when you can't forecast demand out that far, 3 years, it's very difficult to move through some of those situations. So you just acknowledge it and you learn to work with it in a different way. From a governance perspective, we have a number of functional governance bodies we have that roll up through a very structured committee model, task force, program office components that all roll up to really what we call our EC, which is Executive Council of the company. However, I would tell you that I'm 60% lobbyist, and you never call a vote that you don't know the answer to. And so that consumes a good bit of my time. However, it is an invaluable use of my time.
And it also enforces or enhances the relationships that you've got within the organization that are important for you getting your job done.
Yeah, absolutely. The business concept is only a concept. It's like a bill on Capitol Hill. It can get stuck in committee. So the key is to figure out what Dan wants and what you want and how to tailor that so when we get it to the end of the day, we've avoided all of the major obstacles, and we also have a case that can still develop some return for the company.
Todd, how does it work in your world in terms of identifying those things that you want to jump in front of a bullet for and making sure that those stay in your budget?
We have similar governance programs at Verizon, and I will say what I found is where there's a will, there's a way. If we can build a business case around it, and it has to be hard numbers, not just productivity numbers, as Robert said, we can get it through. We can push it through, and we do push it up to the president, CEO level. We have monthly meetings with those guys, making sure that we're working on the priorities that fit. A lot of times they don't understand because we're down there shoveling coal, to Robert's point. They don't understand the significance of it, and it's up to us to make sure they understand why we're pushing on it and get the ally of the CMO or the area president to say, yeah, now I know why we've got to get this project done. So there is a lot of pushing on area regional presidents to understand if we get here, you get here. And that tends to help when you've got that alliance.
So does that fall into advocacy and education?
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Dan, I think you touched these points as you went through your earlier pieces. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I kind of, the downturn has been detrimental without a doubt. I said coming in here this morning, our slogan in the media industry is we're cautiously optimistic, and we've done very well throughout this period of time. But again, I attribute that to it's not that we've taken the downturn and said, we really have to focus on being more efficient, driving down costs, these type of things. We've been doing that for years. With doing that over a period of years, we've developed a trust within our organization, from CEO, to CFO and down, even our brand presidents, that there is a sincere trust on what we are trying to affect, the culture that we've created, around change and, reinventing ourselves, to the point that it's not that tough within our organization for me to get something done that is outside of the brand. I mean, whether it be, we're going to consolidate data centers, or we're going to fully virtualize all of our data centers, or whatever it may be that really isn't tied to a brand proposal. We have not had a hard time, because, again, it is something that we've done, and we've built the reputation and trust factor throughout the chain over the years of doing. So
to advocacy and education, we'd add past successes fueling future positioning.
Yes, absolutely.
Where I can spend $500,000 to $700,000 on a disaster recovery project, we can build a store that's generating recurring revenues of over $1 million a year. So there's that balance you got to play. So I have found those projects that in past years that seem to sell right through are getting a little more scrutiny, but I haven't seen the brakes put on us quite yet. We have not cut back on where we're going with trying to research things like server virtualization and those, because we see the long-term effect of that will put us in an even better position. And to Dan's point, if you've been living like this, and I think we have in our organization, our IT as a percentage of revenue is like 1.3%. We're very low, especially for a telecom company. So if you establish yourself as and have been playing this way all along, you don't feel it as much. So we haven't seen a lot of cutback.
I think from our perspective, on that one question, I think from our perspective is the word budget really is, we've moved to an 18-month rolling forecast with a 3-year strat plan. So I'm not answering. The days of walking in once a year with a great song and dance and leaving for 12 months have long gone. I'm walking into a room full of P&L folks every month, and I get 20 minutes on the agenda. And if it starts out with the sales funnels 3 points off compared to the sales funnel last month, then my part gets funner. You know what I mean? So it really, you have to understand that, and I don't know how many, I've talked to a few CIOs, and some of them have done this, but very few that I've found actually are participating in the business's financial forecasting model on a monthly basis. And so therefore, everything I'm doing is questioned on a monthly basis, not questioned once a year. There are no projects, that are sacred. So generally I think we've moved more into a P&L mindset, at least within our organization, around every practice. And I think it's important to realize that. So then the opportunities also can happen as quick as the challenges. So you can be put under a lot of pressure as quick as you can come up with a great idea to help that line. So it's good and it's bad as well.
Do we have another question? Yes, sir.
I had a question on cost pressures. We're in enterprise software. Alan McLean Rock with CDC Software. We've seen gone from a high growth to a no growth when the economy turned down, and so I obviously have a lot of cost pressures on me. And like Dan was talking about, I would always focus more on team than anything else. And we got this global vestige of buying all these companies, so I got to roll up a bunch of things too. What I've been trying to do is focus on process, lightweight, agile process, get a lot more bang for the buck out of mine. What are y'all doing around that? It sounds like y'all don't have quite the cost pressures maybe some of the rest of us do, but also sounds like a lot of y'all are thinking about processes and so forth. So what exactly are you doing to try to control them?
Let me take that a step further from the standpoint of just Turner. When you look at Time Warner as a company, and all the HBO and the Warner Brothers and Turner and Time Inc. and that type of thing, we have a CIO contingency that we get together once a month. And one of the things that we've focused on, and again, just kind of alluding to building better relationships with the CFO, is we've looked at how do we leverage our spend across all these divisions in a much more robust and better way. How do we get smarter about, Turner's paying X for a product, Time Inc. is paying X plus 1, and then HBO is paying even less than Turner. How do we get smarter? So again, I think we've said, look, as a global media company, we've got to get smarter about even going back to my communication effort. How do we communicate as companies? You know, how do we continue to build the best brands and the best product, but yet continue to drive down costs? And I think that's probably one of the biggest areas of development since Jeff Bukes took over from Dick Parsons is, you know, he was so focused on communication. You know, even though we've always played all of our companies as best in class, it's not like, look at, you know, we're going to do special deals here and that's going to help the cost. We've always said, look, we want you to be best in class and really fight for yourself to make the largest dollar you can. But I think that continued to shroud some of the secrecy around some of the deals that were made by these companies. We busted through that, again, in a big way, and I think that's helped us more than anything over the last couple of years in leveraging our cost and really not have to tinker with our budgets that much, because on the backside of that, now talking Turner specific, you know, we continue to look at that internally. But one of the things around workforce, you know, I am a firm believer that, you know, the culture of your workforce, and this is something I started 9 years ago when I used to run Turner Studios, is that, you know, people have to adapt to change. You know, you saw change coming and accelerating just with knowledge and information and everything else. But unless you have a culture that accepts that you've trained them on given them the tools to accept that and to manipulate and work in that, then you're constantly struggling trying to reinvent these organizations. Whereas once that culture is set and they understand why change is so important, that's when you have a dynamic team and a workforce.
Alan, last year our CIO came to us and said, I want you to tell me how you're going to get twice the throughput in your application development. And we came back, and of course the first answer is we're going to do this, but we need 300 heads. So, and of course, to Robert's point, that's not the answer when you come back to the table. But through that exercise, we put it on kind of the frontline guys. What's in your way? And before we went through this exercise, myself and my peers, we were all saying, you know, I don't think we can get more out of our turns. We're not going to get more turns. We actually had the team go back and build from ground up an enterprise release plan that wouldn't get us twice the throughput, but through that exercise, I know we're getting at least 20% more throughput. So to your point, that's what you have to go back and do is figure out what's in the way. Things like just simple things that we found, dev and test environments not lining up, making sure all the applications have the same number of dev and test environments so you can get those turns, and making sure people are using the same techniques for development. And we have found 20% this year. We hope we'll find more. But that's a great point.